Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cold Hard Truth Podcast. I'm Jack Smith,
I'm Shrikar Rajendran.
And I'm Anish Gupta.
and the football gods, I think they kind of rewarded us. We've had some pretty cruddy weeks the past 2 weeks, and this one, all the way Thursday through, we're recording this today on Thursday, a full week of just drama and great football games, upsets, blowouts. It was an absolutely wild week.
It rewarded some a lot more than it rewarded others. I will say
that is true. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But instead of asking you guys about how your football weekends went, because honestly, we don't got time to talk about that with all of the crazy stuff that happened, I want to start off the intro by just touching on some of the big storylines, big news that we're not covering in our takeaways. I mean, we've got Mike White helping the Jets come back, a big victory against the Bengals. We had the Von Miller trade to the Rams, look like they're going completely all in. Derrick Henry, unfortunately, is injured. We've got a Henry Ruggs fatal accident that we're going to touch on just a little bit. But out of all of those kind of like four big things that we want to cover in this intro, one of you guys, whatever you want to start talking about, feel free, because, man, there was a lot of crazy stuff this week.
Wait, can I go first on this one? I wanted
to
address the Henry Ruggs incident first. Because over the summer, my dad and I talked a lot about DUIs and, drinking and driving. And it can ruin a life. Like, not even for regular people like us, it goes on your permanent record and it stays there. And for Henry Ruggs, a guy who, he's always been looked at as a great teammate. In fact, one of his biggest motivations for playing football was a childhood friend that he lost due to drunk driving. It's a really sad story to see. I've been, keeping tabs on everything with it. I've been reading a lot about it. I even saw the video of him and his girlfriend kind of, holding each other's arms next to the fire. And obviously we do know that it was a 23-year-old woman and a dog that were kind of caught in the fire and obviously, unfortunately passed away. And I'm sure all three of us are, praying for the victim's family, all the loved ones. And I also want to give a prayer to Henry Ruggs, just because I know what he did is unacceptable. And, DUIs and drunk driving, it's one of the worst things. And it's just so unfair to someone who's driving out there, right? Kind of late at night. And it's not even a fault of your own. And most of DUIs, it's actually, you're causing, someone else to suffer the consequences of your actions. And I think that's the worst part about it. It's, exactly why my parents are against driving late at night, just because of things like that. And, for that to happen, for an NFL player, obviously it's going to be portrayed in a bigger light because these things happen all the time, with, quote unquote, regular people. And, this one was just highlighted a lot bigger because of, the brand that Ruggs has been in. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Derek Carr. And I know this is not, directly tied in with the Ruggs situation, but just what he said, he had a press conference about it. And he basically said that Henry Ruggs, as again, what he did was unforgivable, but he just needs someone to be in his corner right now. He's still a human being, and, he's had a lot of good. He's also had this one bad incident, but, for someone like Derek Carr to kind of say that, he will be with him, he will try and reach out to him, and, he'll be there for him. I think that's something that is just, I just have to tip my hat to him and applaud someone like that. And, that's just a true leader, great human being, regardless of what he does on the football field. I thought that was just a great action. And, for Henry Ruggs, hopefully he can try and move past this, but, it's just a tough thing to hear about and see.
Unfortunately, I'm not like totally comfortable speaking on Henry Ruggs, so I'm going to keep it short. But I agree with you 100% on Derek Carr. He's one of the best leaders in football. And I think it really showed this weekend with the incident, how he addressed the media, how he was able, to kind of extend a helping hand to Henry Ruggs in a way. But, you're hoping he moves past this. This is an awful situation. Like, I'm also going to offer a prayer to Henry Ruggs just because this is something that can stay with you forever. And that video of him watching that car in flames, you could tell, like, he was in shock. He was in complete shock. And it was that at that moment, it's not that I, felt bad because it was totally his fault, but like, it's kind of, some sort of feeling of empathy. And it's some sort of feeling of, what if you were in that situation? You feel like you have nowhere to go. You're trapped in a corner. And that stuff is, it has to be valued in a way. So I appreciate Derek Carr for like saying all those words. And I think, he's the guy that Henry Ruggs has got to talk to, because even the night before he was talking to Derek Carr and Hunter Renfrow
about the golf swing. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that the night had to end like that. And it's absolutely it's just an awful situation. Very terrible. But I'm going to let Jack speak on it too.
Yeah, I mean, we can say it's an unfortunate situation. We can offer prayers up to Henry Ruggs, but the harsh reality is it was a completely avoidable, a fatal mistake that Henry Ruggs made. I mean, I know that we focus obviously about football on the podcast every week, but I don't think the focus should be with Henry Ruggs right now. And I know we can say good job for Derek Carr to have empathy for him, and Henry Ruggs needs someone there for him right now. But the truth is he was the cause of someone else's death. And that's kind of where our empathy, I think, mostly needs to lie right now, because Henry Ruggs is the one that's still alive coming out of that crash. And
100%.
He can afford an Uber. He can, he's a smart enough person to know not to drive home drunk. And this mistake is, you wish it doesn't happen, but the truth is it did. And Henry Ruggs needs to be held accountable for that. And the Raiders, I think, have done their part. They released him, I believe, yesterday. I don't know where they kind of go for this, because for the Raiders, this is just two absolutely massive things that have happened to this team in the course of the last 3 to 4 weeks. They've lost their head coach, and now they've lost their first round pick from last year. And they still have to find a way to go out and play football games for the second half of this season. So
I think the Raiders, to touch on that, right? Those two incidents, right? And I think also, that like to see them 5-2 and still kind of going on, that's just, again, tremendous, kind of props to them. But, to touch on the release of Ruggs, I think what the Raiders simply said was, this is not a football matter right now.
Yeah.
This is a legit, criminal offense. This is a felony. And, that is not something that the Raiders should have to handle, or should have to, speak on for the rest of the season, or even as, how long Ruggs was supposed to be on the team. So I think the release was completely justified, and I totally agreed with it. And you're right, Jack. I think, empathy should go towards the family, because that is just a brutal way to lose, a loved one, two technically with the dog. Right. And ironically, we all went to the same high school, and something like that actually happened a few months back. Because it was a hit and run, and there was a car who, crashed into someone and killed, I believe it was a girl. I believe it was right on the street across our high school. So, we've it's not the first time we've heard about something like this, all three of us. And, unfortunate as it is, it certainly won't be the last. But, it just goes to show, and I'm glad, the NFL community at least has kind of been exposed to it now, right? Like, this is a serious problem, and, it needs to be handled. So I'm just glad that the Raiders kind of, said that this is not a football matter. I think that's what they did with this move. And I think that's a good way to conclude it.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of have to transition with this one. I don't want to transition from this to just a happy thing. So I guess we'll kind of have to touch on Derrick Henry going down for what looks to be the rest of the season. They're saying 6 to 8 or 6 to 10 weeks out with a foot injury. And of course, for the past 2 years, we've all applauded Derrick Henry's durability, taking 30 plus touches every single game at the running back position, being his size, his speed. It didn't make sense. And it looks like that kind of caught up to him. He might return if the Titans are able to make the playoffs and, maybe play a couple games. It might take that long, but just, it sucks, because Derrick Henry was at the prime of his career. He was doing something we had absolutely never seen before from running back his size, being able to run as fast as he does. He was just an absolutely dominant NFL player. Probably can count on maybe one hand. I don't even know about that. Players as talented and as good at the game of football as Derrick Henry. And so for him to be knocked out of the season, it's a huge blow to the Titans. It's a huge blow to NFL fans, NFL fantasy owners for sure. And we're now going to see, I've been in the camp, and I think we all have, that Derrick Henry is not the sole reason that the Titans offense has performed well. I think we're all in that camp that believes that Ryan Tannehill deserves a lot of credit for that. And over the next couple of weeks, for the rest of the season, we're going to find out, and we're going to see whether we were right. But it just, prayers up to Derrick Henry. It sucks to lose him for such a long injury. We hope we can get him back, and hopefully he doesn't skip a beat when he comes back. He can still be that same king that we've seen him as for the past couple of years.
It's a crushing blow. And Obviously, the running game takes a hit, but I also think the passing game takes a hit in some sense because Ryan Tannehill really thrives off play action. And without Derrick Henry in the mix, I feel like it's just going to be a lot harder to run it as effectively. Now, I'm not saying they can't run it, but I mean, it's going to be a challenge for Ryan Tannehill, but I think he can step up to the challenge. And I think he can, at least keep the Titans as a playoff team, especially with the signing of Adrian Peterson. Who knows how that's going to go? Jeremy McNichols, could be something special. We'll see. But just a crushing blow for the Titans. They're sitting at 6-2 right now, but this conference is just so wide open. And having a guy like Derrick Henry at running back is just, it's so valuable. He is one of the most valuable assets in the league. No matter what we may think, about Ryan Tannehill and how he's the guy who makes this offense run, we cannot discount Derrick Henry's value to this Titans offense because, he may not be the reason it goes, but he plays a big part in it. And I mean, he definitely deserves his credit there. So we're going to see how the running game looks, and we're also going to see how the passing game looks, and how the Titans will bounce back after this injury.
Glad we're talking about a football matter here. And I think this is, it's a tough blow considering that, a lot of us are Derrick Henry fans, and I think he's the epitome of a true workhorse back. But I will say this, I think he will be back this season. It is a 6 to 10 week injury. And I think he'll probably be back in around that 8 to 10 week mark. And right now we're sitting at around week 9. I think the Titans are definitely a playoff team. They've got a 3.5 game lead on the Colts, 3 game lead on the Colts, technically 4 because the tiebreaker. So I think they're going to lock up the division easy. They're going to be favored in every game except probably the Rams. I'm pretty sure the Rams will be the only game that they're not favored in. So I looked at their schedule. I mean, I can see them going 12-5 honestly at the minimum. If you look at their schedule, it's very, very favorable. They got out of this hard stretch. So I think they're going to kind of bounce in, into the playoffs, maybe with the bye, we'll see. And I think Derrick Henry will be back for that. But I do want to touch on the injury because I actually heard, Shannon Sharp say this. I think it gave him an extra 1 to 2 years of his prime because look, this guy was on pace to have the most touches for a running back by far, not even close. And I don't care who you are, especially a running back. Those touches will weigh down on you over time. And if the Titans want to keep this guy around for longer, which they definitely do, I feel like this injury and, to put some type of positive spin on it, obviously you don't want to say that the injury was good, but at least I think it prolongs his prime. It gives him a little bit of time to heal, right? And obviously, he has to put weight on that foot. So, hence he'll probably need some extra time. But I think for a guy like this to come in with, fresh legs when the season kind of ends, to put some positive spin on it, I think that could be huge for a Tennessee team, going forward in that regard. But as of right now, again, I'm probably the highest out of all of us on Ryan Tannehill. I love his game. I think he is a true leader, and I think the Titans will be just fine. AJ Brown, again, like, Jack was saying, from a fantasy perspective too, this guy's got top 10 upside going forward. Again, we've all kind of regarded him in that top 10 category as an overall wide receiver, and Julio Jones will be back in the lineup. So I think from a football perspective, the Titans will be fine, and I think Derrick Henry will also be fine. But from an injury standpoint, it just sucks.
Yeah, I'm glad we've got some of the tougher topics to talk about out of the way, and now we can start to get into some of the more exciting things from the past week. Let's start it off by talking about that Von Miller trade. It's not any of our takeaways for this week, but we could still kind of go around, quickly touch on it because you never really see this. I mean, the Rams now, after this trade for Von Miller, a 2nd and 3rd round pick, they have basically no draft picks in next year, and they're going completely all in. And I don't think over the past 5 years, you can name a defense that had 3 players of this caliber, and Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and Von Miller, who at some point in their career, and I'd say argue 2 of them right now, are the absolute cream of the crop, best player in the NFL at their position. And Von Miller is probably still a top 5 edge rusher. And that's just absolutely absurd. You don't think so?
I think he's still a couple years, away from his 2016 self.
I know that. I mean, he's away from his prime, but before his injury this year that kept him out of a couple games, he was tearing it up.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I think he's still a great player, and also intellectually, right? Like he's he can teach guys like Leonard Floyd, right? And who plays a little bit more like Vaughn rather than Aaron Donald. So I think that's 2 guys on the edge that are just really scary. And again, for the Rams, like you said, they're gonna have, I think, 3 conditional picks next year. I'll touch on it quickly. I think the Rams are going all in just because if you draft guys, they just won't be able to play. think about it, right? If you draft rookies next year, where would they play? They're loaded on every positional, group that you just wouldn't find a place for them yet. And you'd kind of have to develop them. And I don't think the Rams want to focus on that right now. They're going all in, as you mentioned. And I think they're one of those, maybe 3-4 teams that have the right to do that. So yeah, I think, 2023, I don't think they'll have their first round pick again, but again, there'll be a way to accumulate draft capital for, those following years. But I think for the next 2 years, they're set. Like they're already working on an extension with Vaughn. I think they're set for the next 2 years, and this team is going to be formidable.
Rams are going all in. It's Super Bowl or bust for them. But I also really like the Broncos side of the trade. I like what they got in return, because the second and a third, a pair of top 100 picks. Think about the quarterbacks that are going to be available this offseason. You got Russell Wilson potentially available. Deshaun Watson will be available. Aaron Rodgers may be available. If you want to trade for one of those guys, you need to have assets. And I think having a pair of top 100 picks, if you're George Payton, you're just sitting there and you're going, this is great. Because Von Miller, he wasn't going to be, in the future of the Broncos. He was getting old. He just wasn't going to fit that timeline. So getting him to the Rams, he's going to be happy in LA. I'm sure of it, even though he has to leave Denver. I think he's going to like it in LA, and getting those 2 picks back, I think it was a great deal for the Broncos, and I think it was a solid return. But who knows what they're going to do with those assets? I think they have enough to go after a quarterback now, but it all depends on what that front office decides to do. But for the Rams, it is definitely Super Bowl or bust for them. They are going all in, and that defensive front is scary. You got Aaron Donald, Sebastian Joseph Day. You got Leonard Floyd. Now you add Von Miller to the mix. It's terrifying. And if you're an offensive line, I'd hate going up against that. But the Rams are looking nice. They're looking very nice. And I think the Broncos also got a good return too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Whether they bring back Von Miller for the foreseeable future will really determine, how we can grade this trade. But I think it's a pretty good move for both sides. And if the Broncos decide and they opt not to trade for a quarterback next year, but instead they like one in the draft, they draft in the first round, this gives them an extra second, third round pick to draft an offensive lineman or a weapon, or build that defense to bring a little bit more stability to a rookie quarterback possibly coming in. But the last thing we want to talk about in the intro, I know it's getting a long intro, bear with us. We'll get to our takeaways. Mike F.N. White is what they call him in New York, knocks off the Cincinnati Bengals, throws for 400 yards, first by a Jets quarterback since 2000. He did throw 2 picks. I want to wipe those off before we even get into those. They weren't his fault. They were both off the hands of his intended receivers on good throws. So 400 yards. He comes out and he beats the Cincinnati Bengals, comes back down 11 at the worst, and he beats the Cincinnati Bengals and does an absolutely gutsy performance. His jersey and stuff were put in the Hall of Fame. And for a guy that we knew nothing about, Mike White coming in, knocking off the Bengals, huge thing for Jets fans. They play tonight, the night we're recording this. So tomorrow, if you're listening to this episode, you might realize that Mike White threw for 100 yards and 3 picks, and the Jets got blown out by the Colts. But that won't take away anything from his performance against the Bengals.
Don't jinx him, man. Don't do that, dude.
Hey, I'm still rooting
knock
for
on
him
wood
this week,
for the Colts. I'm knocking on wood for him. You'll win.
Well, I just want to know, what do you guys think about Mike White's performance? Do you think it's possibly sustainable? Is he the next Tom Brady? He's going to replace Zach Wilson like Bledsoe. What do you guys think of his performance?
I'll say this. Without question, the best performance by a New York quarterback this season. No question about it.
Well, yeah.
Zach Wilson still has a few more weeks with that knee injury. I mean, there is definitely a fair question about, what happens when he comes back. And I don't know, because he could obviously tank in the upcoming games. But if he maintains this, it just comes down to whether the Jets side with draft slot or production. And if you decide to go with Mike White over Zach Wilson, what does that do to Zach Wilson's confidence? How does that affect his development? You never know. So, I mean, it's a tough decision for Robert Saleh. I don't know. I'm going to say that I don't know until we get more on Mike White, because we can't judge him after one game. It was a great performance. Way too early, though.
Yeah, agreed. Teams, again, you don't have much film on him. So he kind of got to do what he wanted in the sense, because, defenses were kind of, what are you scheming for? What is he? Is he a Peyton Manning type of player, or, where he's not as mobile and outside of the pocket? Or is he like a Kyler Murray where you'll just move around? You just didn't really know what his tendencies were. So I think, that's why he was kind of able to have these kind of, crazy plays and, that. And by the way, that catch by Keelan Cole, I just had to give a shout out. That was crazy. I know it didn't count, but it was absurd.
Should have counted.
And it was a good throw. But I think, as Shrikar alluded to, what happens with Zach and Mike, I think it's just, I'm a believer that you always go for a guy that gives you a better chance to win. That's just my mentality. And if it is Mike White at the time, I'm going to go with him. It's plain and simple. And I just, even if you want to give it to Zach, just for maybe you can develop him. I mean, you've got a guy here that you maybe could develop over time, right? I think if Tom Brady has shown us anything, it doesn't matter where you were drafted. It's what you can do on the field, right? People develop all the time. And I think that's, going to be the question moving forward. But, Mike White, again, just for that game, tremendous to be down 11 and to come back. I thought the game was over once the Jets were down 20-31 and finds a way, right? They ran the little Philly special in New York to get that 2-point conversion. That was lovely to see. Gave me a little bit of 2018 Baker vibes, but great game all around. And we'll see, again, tough test against this Colts defense on Thursday night. It's going to be at Indy as well. So let's see how it goes. But as the time we're recording this, we'll get another sense of how good he is. But as of right now, great performance, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, as much as I'm saying I don't think Mike White's performance is sustainable, I'm hoping I'm eating my words tomorrow morning when this episode comes out. The thing I do think is sustainable, though, is Michael Carter's perforance. I don't know if you guys saw it, but 75 on the ground, 9 catches for 95 through the air. He's got like 150 total yards, both in the last 2 games. A huge receiving threat. And I saw someone come out and say he looked like Alvin Kamara Jr. And like, honestly, with the opportunity he's getting, he definitely does. It'll be interesting to see once Zach Wilson comes back if that is the same, because Mike White was a check down god in last week's game. But over the last couple of games, Michael Carter's really carving out a role for himself.
Yes.
He's doing a great job with the ball in his hands. Teams just can't bring him down. He almost always gets around or breaks that first tackle. I've been really, really inspired by what Michael Carter has done. And I think that maybe if Mike White doesn't turn out to be the same 400-yard guy every week, Michael Carter, I think there's a pretty good solid chance he is a running back 1 for the next 5 years.
Remember, we talked about it. We were both very happy with that pick. 4th round out of UNC, right? Again, you're not spending as much capital on a running back like that. I love the pick.
It just starts that point even further.
It's better than Javonte Williams in the 2nd round. It's like they were pretty similar players, and you just get them in the 4th round. I loved the Michael Carter
love the pick as well. Yep.
He's doing some pretty good things over the last couple of weeks.
For sure. Should we get into my takeaway?
Yeah, feel free. I mean, I go first on takeaways like every week, and I always feel bad because they end up being longer than yours. So I'll go last this time. You guys may start it off.
Go ahead.
Sounds good. Shreek. We got to talk about this Jameis Winston injury. Of course, before the season started, I'd say Jack and Anish were definitely higher on this, Winston opportunity than I was. But it's just a very confusing situation for the Saints heading into the offseason. Right now, it's, pretty odd because you got to pick between Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian. But the Saints are $56 million over the cap right now, which is absurd. That's like standard for Mickey Loomis. But what are the Saints going to do with Jameis Winston? Because these past few months, he was solid, but was he amazing? No. Maybe they can work out a short-term deal to bring him back, because even if, let's assume Jameis Winston plays 17 games and he plays, well, it would have been tough to bring him back on a long-term deal. So maybe, this allows a prove-it deal. Maybe he can come back and start next year for the Saints potentially. Of course, Loomis could also look into this quarterback class, but I mean, this class is pretty horrendous for QBs, so I don't know if he should do that. But it's just a very, very weird spot for the Saints, just with Jameis Winston. Obviously, prayers up to Jameis Winston. Just an awful injury there too. But who knows? Like, it's a very confusing spot for the Saints now, and also for Jameis Winston, because, who knows what type of deal he's going to get now.
I think it's more confusing for Jameis, less confusing for the Saints. And here's why. I think you're right. What do they do with Jameis? Obviously, Jack and I were higher, and hence, they're 5-2 right now. And I think the biggest takeaway for me from that Saints game wasn't even the Jameis injury. It was that the Saints have the best defense in football. I think they do. I think I would take them 1 and Bills 2. They played amazing against Tom Brady. And I think for the Saints, right, as you said, the quarterback class is horrendously bad, but if anyone can develop a raw prospect, it is Sean Payton. So I think they could take a flyer in the 2nd or 3rd round. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. And again, I think the $56 million over the cap, part of it is due to Taysom Hill's insane contract. So I think with the voidable years, they can kind of do away with at least a little bit of it. But you're right. In terms of who do they start, Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian. I was looking at a couple games that Taysom played last year when Drew Brees got hurt for, I believe, 4 games. Taysom Hill wasn't bad. He played good. He had almost 300-yard passing a couple games, was pretty efficient. So again, Sean Payton is a very, very smart and technical head coach. So I trust him a lot. And I think that's why I'm not as worried about the Saints right now. Yes, their long-term future is still in question. What do they do? Because they don't really have upside. They still have, a good roster, but it's guys that are, in their primes right now starting to age. So I think, in the course of the long-term future, yes, the Saints aren't, looking too hot. But as of right now, I think they're still a playoff team in my book. I trust that defense. I trust Sean Payton. And look, Simeon wasn't bad. I think, he had enough plays to win the game, and he had, enough plays to where it wasn't going to lose you any games. That was my take on Simeon. And, again, Taysom gives you that electric spark, but I think the Saints are in a less of a weird spot right now. It's just, what do they do long-term? I'll give you that.
Oh, and real quick. I think Sean Payton should definitely be in the running for coach of the year right now.
He might be the favorite, honestly.
I think because Brandon Staley, is it really him anymore?
Too many. I think, again, this award, you kind of figure out by week 14. There's the
next few weeks will definitely be telling, but right now I think
it's too early to tell right now for anybody. So, and obviously they give it to a guy who hasn't won it. Like I don't think Andy Reid has won it yet. So
I don't think Belichick's ever won it.
Yeah. So, it's just it's a weird award, and I think we'll figure it out by week 14 around that area.
I definitely wouldn't discount the Saints looking into this quarterback class. Like, I wouldn't say it's horrendously bad. I think we've been really, really, really spoiled over the last 4 years with the quarterback classes that we've gotten. And this might be the best year for the Saints to actually look in, because you got to think, like, how often are the Saints going to be picking in the top 10 where the quarterbacks normally go? There are going to be some what people will deem first round quarterbacks, even though that may mean something different than it has meant over the last couple of years, but they might fall to wherever the Saints are picking. So this might be their best opportunity. Plus it's the lowest financial investment. Cause I just don't think you can give Jameis Winston a contract coming off of an injury like this. But also, I mean, he's got to stop dancing in the damn locker room if he's got a torn ACL.
You can't lie though. That was so funny.
That was very funny.
But at the same time, come on, dude, you got to make you got to get the contract next year. Yeah. I don't think Taysom Hill is the long-term option. I don't think Trevor Siemian is the long-term option. Mm-hmm. I don't think that they have the funds to be able to land an Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson. So you're right, Trigger. They're in this extremely weird spot. But I think they're going to try and figure that out later and figure out right now, because they're still 5-2. They're still in the running, even for that division with the Bucs. And definitely for the playoffs. So they got to focus on getting through the rest of this season, because they could be a team that could threaten to win the division, make the playoffs, maybe win some playoff games. They just got to figure it out. I think Taysom Hill is probably the guy for the rest of the year. And I'll get into him actually in our fantasy start sit segment. But I think Taysom Hill could be the guy for the rest of this year, bring them to the playoffs. And Sean Payton and this defense are really, I think, what's going to decide the Saints season more than this quarterback.
And real quick, in that NFC, since it's so top heavy, who do you guys think are going to be those two wildcard teams?
Wait, okay. Since the NFC is so top heavy, the two besides the Saints? Because I think the Saints are one of them.
I think the Saints are one.
It's pretty obvious. It's going to be one of Saints Bucks and then one of
I think it'll be the Saints.
No. So no, but there's three. There's three wild. I think
I meant three.
I think Shrikar's assuming Arizona gets it or LA. Which he's right.
Assuming NFC West
gets assume the same thing with Saints and Bucks.
Yeah, agreed. I think so too.
That third one is tough.
That last one,
third one, honestly, Seattle when Russ
that one is way too early to tell, because for example, last year Arizona was 8-6, and you thought they were kind of a lock, and then they lose their final two, and Chicago snuck in. So it's
not Minnesota. I'll tell you that, Anish.
No,
I still think it can be. But
with Mike Zimmer, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I mean, that team is so badly
one thing
coached.
I saw about the Vikings, and I know I don't want to talk about them a lot, but it's just, the players, there was this one thing I saw, and it was Dalvin Cook had a nasty stiff arm on, I forget who, it was one of the Cowboys players, and just no one got excited. I mean, that's like, where's the culture? Where is the, rallying around your team? I mean, that's got to be on Zimmer, right? So, he's not a guy that's so, so hell-bent on getting his team amped up. He's not a Saleh, not a Dan Campbell, something that you would, players would want to root for. Just didn't like that. So you're right. Zimmer should be on the hot seat, but I think Minnesota still has a chance.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I realize is how not as good the NFC is. Like, I know they've got some really good top heavy teams, and like the couple top
I think conferences
teams.
flipped. They flipped this year. They flipped.
Yeah, they did. But the rest, I mean, The Bears, not that good. The Vikings, not that good.
Yeah.
Everyone else in the NFC East, bad. The NFC South, I think, is you might get 2 wild cards out of there.
I think maybe Carolina. I think you can get Carolina. Maybe
or the
Atlanta
Falcons, honestly.
I honestly wouldn't discount Seattle when Russ comes back.
I think I agree. I think
Mm-hmm.
that pick is maybe where I have like some confidence. Like the rest of the teams, I think I can see like Carolina or Atlanta. I just don't have much confidence in that happening.
Yeah.
Yep. It's
crazy.
Polar opposite.
That last spot, you're right.
The AFC is so wide open, and then the NFC is just like 5 teams, and then like a huge margin, and then it's just the rest.
And of course, crazy. You know what happened is that 7 seed is going to end up beating the 2 seed, and
that'd be really cool. That would be really.
It always. I mean, it would make sense at least from what we've seen this season.
Yeah.
Did you want to get your takeaway, Anish?
All right. So my takeaway, well, it is about the Browns, and this is the first Browns takeaway that we've had, and it's going to be a combination of both things about the Odell situation, about the Browns in general. But my main takeaway is that if the Browns lose to the Bengals on Sunday, I think their season is over. I don't think they make the playoffs, and I think they have to reevaluate a lot of things on both sides of the ball next offseason. And the reason why is because, I made a post about it. I was just so frustrated with all the things that had happened, the past couple of days about Odell Beckham Jr. And, this is exactly why I've wanted him out. It's just unnecessary narratives, unnecessary attention that's been brought to a locker room that's trying to change a losing culture. This has been happening, for the last 2 years. Every single time he's been on the field, it's always this question of would they have won without him? Whose fault is it? Right. And it's just so unnecessary for a team that's really just trying to avoid all these distractions. And I saw, Chris Broussard, an analyst, who's an NBA analyst, and now he's, doing another show where he has to talk about football. And he stated that the Browns just can't handle expectations. And yes, I agree with that, and part of it is on them. They need to learn to handle stuff like this, but some of it is unnecessary, right? Every time they've been doubted, coming into 2020, everyone thought they would be mediocre. Remember, Shrieker had them 7-9. And what do? They go 11-5. They kind of prove people wrong. They had no expectations of winning in Pittsburgh, and they do it. But the years prior, right, 2019, when they were expected to make a surge, 2021, again, they've fallen short. And I think it's just, part of it is on them. But this unnecessary stuff with the whole, Odell Beckham Sr. video, and with even LeBron, who has no business critiquing, what the Browns should do or shouldn't do, makes a post like that. And again, it brings all these people who are fans of them, right? Especially with Odell, who's a social media star. It's just this unnecessary stuff, backlash towards everyone on the team, saying the Browns are a poverty franchise for not, freeing Odell. When in reality, it's not just Odell's fault. It's not just Baker's fault. There's no one who's truly at fault here. It's just, a culmination of things not working. And, I broke down a lot of the stuff that, how the Browns ran their offense in 2019, right? Things with RPOs. That's how they got back on the ball. The system is just not the same. And people have to realize that. It was the same thing with Stephon Diggs in Minnesota. Ironically, Stefanski was also there. They had, 2 1,000-yard receivers. Dalvin Cook was there. Diggs was unhappy. Okay. Despite them winning, right? And it just goes to show that Diggs wasn't really used. He fits better in a different system where he can be a number one. And we've seen it with Buffalo. So, that's kind of my little spill on it. And I think, for a team that just a lot of unnecessary drama, this game is going to be a really big telling test, because if they lose, right, I'm just going to conclude it with this. If they lose, everyone's going to be on their case. Oh, they would have won with Odell. They would have won if they could get the ball to Odell, right? If they lose on Sunday, they'll fall to 4-5. And I think, they're just teams with, a lot more stability than them right now. Pittsburgh being one, New England being another. I just don't think they get into a wild card spot, and certainly not the division.
You want to go or shit?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've defended Odell, I think, a lot this year. I've come out and said that I thought he could have a top 10 wide receiver season this year, because I just didn't expect the chemistry failure between Baker and Odell to be something that could just be continuing. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I don't think we've ever seen something like this. Like, I know Diggs and Cousins had like a little scuffle that one time in Minnesota, but just for on the field, a quarterback just to not be able to hit a good receiver who gets open decently consistently, and the receiver just
I'm playing better without him. It's so weird.
I think they're both good. I think Baker's good, and I think Odell's good, and they just can't do it together, and it makes absolutely no sense to me. And I will stand by my take that he could have had a top 10 wide receiver season if they just had the right chemistry. Like if it worked out together, I think Odell is in a perfect offense for him to succeed. I think Odell is a perfect receiver for Baker. They can't do it. He can hit everyone else deep other than Baker. And at this point, it's inexplicable, but it's true. And I can't defend what Odell's dad did, but I will say, I think it is a little bit weak what the Browns are doing by just saying he's basically not on the team and telling him not to come to practice. Like it's making all these headlines. And I think it's another just dumb thing the Browns have done, especially when you consider the fact that they could have traded him to a multitude of teams before the deadline. Like the Saints wanted Odell Beckham Jr. and they decided not to trade him. And then the next day just come and say, don't come to practice. I think it is absolutely stupid what the Browns have done. I think it is a terrible move. It makes no sense, especially coming on the heels of the trade deadline. I don't understand. There may be something that we don't know yet. I've heard there are reports from other Browns players saying that when Odell is around, he talks to nobody. He sits by himself. Then trade him. It makes absolutely no sense. The Browns, I think, are the clear losers of the trade deadline outside of Miami Dolphins. And honestly, while I can't defend some of the stuff, like I think you're maybe overreacting a little bit to the LeBron thing, because LeBron is such a big Cleveland person. He's allowed to put out his personal opinion just like you are.
It's just a weird thing to say, though.
But he knows. No, but hold on. He's a friend of Odell, and he knows what he's doing. Anyone in a player's camp who says something like this, whether it be a relative, a close friend, has to have consent from the guy. I don't care who it is. And LeBron especially knows that. You guys know how much of a LeBron fan I am, but for him to do that, he knows that his followers are going to see it. And keep in mind, this dude has tens of millions of followers on Twitter. Everyone's going to see it. And if someone like that, someone that they idolize, is saying that, they're going to side with him. They are, right? Because they say, like, look at this. LeBron's played football. He knows football. And if he's saying this, I got to say it too. That is just, it's so unnecessary to a team that he's supposedly a fan of, right? He supposedly supports. He knows what this is going to do, right? Because here's the thing. Yes, they did it hours before the trade deadline. Keep in mind, hours. So you're banking on the fact that he was going to be traded. If he doesn't, it's over. You cannot see him in the same locker room again. You can't, because what is that? It's so hard for him to go back now, right? And, two guys, Baker Mayfield and Odell, who have consistently worked with each other in the offseason. I've seen a multitude of videos on different channels, right? On Jarvis's official channel, I've seen them, going on a boat together in Austin. I mean, they've done all these types of things. They've been so close. And for his dad to release a video like that, there had to have been some consent within Odell. And I'm not saying Odell's at fault, because Baker's wife, Emily, also, liked a bunch of posts defending Baker. So I'm not going to say either of them are completely, innocent here, but it's just so hard for a quarterback, right? I mean, that's just so, big to his confidence, right? Especially a guy like Baker Mayfield, who's, always got this chip on his shoulder, right? What type of message does that send to him? And, there's still a lot of people who believe in this whole notion that Baker is better without Odell. And I think this is the game for him to kind of prove that. This is a big game for him. A guy who's considered to have owned Cincinnati, right? 5-1 in his 6 games against them. He's had some of his best games. His best career game, in my opinion, was against Cincy, right? Statistically last year. So this is a huge win, because I want to talk about that in itself, more about the Browns, right? Because if they're 4-4 right now, and obviously we could point to some games that they should have won, right? Kansas City being one of them, LA being another. But reality of it is that they're 4-4. They've beaten the teams that they should have, and they've lost at the teams that they could have, but just have fallen short against. And all right. Yeah, you want to say something?
I'll say something. I mean, you lose to a Steelers team with no offense. For the second half, they had no kicker. So you're basically just going up against that defense. And now you're 4-4, last place in the AFC North. I'll say this. Baker Mayfield is playing with a harness on his left shoulder. So I got to give him props for actually fighting through and being able to play. But, I mean, the rest of the roster still is injured. The schedule is not looking good. You still got 5 divisional games on the docket. It's very unforgiving there. I mean, the playoffs are still a distinct possibility, but I don't know. This season was supposed to be so much more for the Browns. We had them as potential Super Bowl contenders. No. We had them, contending for the division at least. Not doing that either. It's such a dud of a season when we compare it to the expectations they had, which is why I agree with what Anish said and what Chris Broussard said about expectations. This team plays better when there's not as much pressure on them. Obviously, there's pressure every year, but I mean, every year they have expectations. they always flounder. And and even like beyond, this regular season, there's still a lot of questions. What's going to happen to Rashard Higgins in free agency? What's going to happen to Wyatt Teller? What's going to happen to, Odell,
Denzel
obviously,
Ward.
what's going to happen? Denzel Ward, you got David Njoku. What's going to happen with him?
Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield.
Does Mayfield?
No, Chubb
pick
set
up that
Chubb
option?
Set. Chubb,
I forgot. Yes, they did.
Chubb
They did
signed.
extend
Chubb signed.
Yeah.
Does Mayfield get that extension? Do they pick up the 5th year option? What's going to happen there? It's also fair to consider, but I wouldn't say the Browns, they're dead. But I don't know. I'm starting to count them out right now.
I am already counting them out. And you can quote me on this. You can clip it, Jack. If the Browns lose on Sunday, I guarantee they won't make the playoffs this season. I guarantee it. I will 100%. I will double down on it. I will put my money's worth where my mouth is. I 100% guarantee that the Browns will not make the playoffs if they don't beat Cincinnati.
I think
the funny part is, if they do beat Cincinnati, they've got the same record as the Bengals.
Yep. So that's how big of a game this is. Think about it. Let's say Baltimore loses, right? Let's say just some way they lose to Minnesota, and let's say we beat Cincinnati, right? We're 5-4, right? The Steelers, okay, they're 5-3. Bengals are also 5-4. We'd have the tiebreaker, and Baltimore's 5-3. This division is still wide open if the Browns were to win. If they lose, then you kind of got your placings. You've got Ravens at 1, Bengals at 2. That's still a toss-up. And then you've got Steelers at a clear 3, and we're going to be a clear 4. I'm really confident in saying that. And look, you guys can call me. People have tried calling me a biased Browns fan. I think that is absolutely not the case. I'm as realistic when it comes to this team. And I think as of right now, I'm full confidence in saying that this is honestly the season right now.
Yeah, I think it is also entirely my fault, and I do apologize because you're getting the Jack Smith Super Bowl curse.
Yeah, I hate you. I said this in the beginning of the year. I was so pissed when this dude was high on the Browns because I knew something was going to happen. You can never have Jack Smith like your team. It always has to be Jack going against them so that they can do good. So yeah. I completely blame him in terms of my superstitions. But look, I'm knocking on wood. I'm sure you guys could hear that through the mic, that the Browns will win on Sunday. I am praying. I took my Baker Mayfield poster down. Maybe that'll give us some luck. I don't know. I'm trying everything.
Oh, you got to show the shirt. You got to show the shirt.
Yeah, yep. This is the last time you will ever see this shirt. Okay. I'm never wearing this again. If we lose, I'm throwing this out the window. I've got my window right there. It's 2 stories high. I'm throwing it down. But yeah, that's probably what's going to happen on Sunday because it's not looking good.
Yeah, I still think I'm holding out hope that the Browns can sneak into the playoffs because I think that they are still a very dangerous team. The style of football they play is very conducive to being able to win in the playoffs, but it's not looking good right now. It's not looking good, and we'll come back next week and we'll have a better opinion on it once we see this Bengals game, and we're gonna pick that one later today. It is gonna be it's a doozy. It's a tough one to pick. My takeaway to kind of round out the takeaways for this week: we cannot discount the Green Bay Packers as long as Aaron Rodgers is still under center as quarterback. And I'm going to get into this and then we can talk about the interesting wrinkle of that that we learned yesterday. But to focus in on Thursday Night Football last week, they knocked off the last unbeaten team. The Arizona Cardinals were 7-0 without, and I would argue, 4 of their 5 best players. Zadarius Smith, David Bakhtiari, J.L. Alexander, and Devontae Adams.
Yep.
You can put it in whatever order you want. I think, like, honestly, that list of those 4, one of those I feel like I could form an argument is their best player. I don't know if I would argue that Aaron Rodgers is one on that Packers team, but that's 3. You could argue 3 players that are the top of their position in the NFL, and Bakhtiari, Jerry Alexander, and Devontae Adams. And they beat that unbeaten Cardinals team without those 4 guys, as well as their defensive coordinator, from a gutsy performance from Aaron Rodgers, Randall Cobb. Both the running backs played well. And the defense, they showed up and they've kind of done what a lot of teams recently have done against the Arizona Cardinals, some to more success than others, but it kind of started in that San Francisco 49ers game. And I just think we have to admit and come out and say this team is still a big threat. They've got an easy walking path to win their division. And as long as they have Aaron Rodgers under center, they're Super Bowl contenders and they can win on any given day.
Well, they pretty much wrapped up the division on that Bears game. Anish, I'll let you go first, though.
Well, I wanted to say this because I don't know. Look, if we're being okay, first I want to start up. That was one of the most impressive games I've ever seen Rodgers play. Yeah. And hey, Cal alum, go Rodgers. But look, that to do that, right, without 11 starters and to go into Arizona, tough place to play, short week, right? And despite all the injuries, he lost his tight end during the game. He pulled it out. And I thought that touchdown, Aaron Jones, was BS. That was a touchdown. I don't know why they had enough.
I disagree. I think it wasn't a touchdown, but it should have been ruled a touchdown.
Referee wise, if it was ruled a touchdown, there was not enough to call it back. So yeah, you're right in terms of that. But I thought, how the refs work, I thought that was just dumb. But yeah, for Rodgers, again, just shows why he's a consensus top 3 quarterback in the NFL. That separates the good from the great to the elite, right? There's some great quarterbacks out there, but I don't know how many could really do what he did to really hone in and control the offense, control the game on his fingertips. That's what he had. He had the game on his hands. It was not in Kyler Murray's hands throughout the entire, game. Whether it was the running game, give it all you want, right? Rodgers did enough plays to win, and he really was in control of that entire game. So I'll speak on that. But I do want to talk about, long-term for the Packers. You're right. When they do have him, they will have a legit shot. But we do realize what happened with the whole vaccination thing. And I think I'm actually really concerned because, one, he's going to miss 10 days. That's a bare minimum if you're unvaccinated. And two, what is the NFL going to do with him, being caught? Because he has violated multiple things with the unvaccinated stuff, right? We've seen quarterbacks like Carson Wentz and Kirk Cousins. They have to wear a mask every time when they speak to the press. They have to wear they cannot be seen with 3 or more players without a mask, right? In a, outside of the facilities. And Rodgers has broken multiple of those violations, right? A Halloween party, no mask. Again, every press conference he's been in, no mask. So he's broken a lot of those protocols. And what is the NFL going to do? Are they going to penalize him for that in some way, right? So long-term, what is this going to be? And this, it's not like a selfish thing for Rodgers, but it's just, manipulation of the media, right? He didn't really tell him what his vaccination status was. So
people would argue he lied.
Yeah. So if you did that, what are the consequences?
He said he's immunized and not vaccinated.
Yeah, because
I don't know
I
what
believe
that
he
means.
did. He did some sort of. I think he checked it with the NFL and they disapproved of it. So
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Look, long term, because if he misses, he's going to miss this game and he might miss the next one. I believe it's Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. So that, I think long term, you've got to really think about it, because if the NFL punishes him in some way, and also if he gets it again, 10 days minimum. What if this was a playoff game, right? Like this is just very stupid. And again, no one's questioning his intelligence. No one's questioning his demeanor. No one's questioning his play on the field. But something like this, that what you're going into with this. I'm not going to say whether getting vaccinated or not is better. I'm not going to speak on that because, again, it's such a big stance today's age. But in the NFL how they regard it, and that your actions have consequences not only for yourself, but for the team. And we just saw it like that. So that's my concern. But in terms of football perspective, Aaron Rodgers is right now a top 3 MVP candidate, barring this. And I think the Packers are going to be formidable no matter what.
I mean, if you look at the numbers, they're not spectacular by Rodgers standards, but the dude just wins. Like, he is a certified winner. He is we talked about Derrick Henry being a valuable asset. He is the definition of value. If without Aaron Rodgers, who knows? And speaking of which, Jordan Love this Sunday. I mean, who knows how that's going to turn out?
All eyes are there. All eyes are going to be on
him. Chiefs caught a break.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Hey, that's what the Bengals were thinking. That's what the Bengals were thinking.
From what we've seen in the NFL to this point, Jordan Love, and we know that the Chiefs could lose any game at this point.
We're talking about the Chiefs versus the Bengals. Come on, this is a team.
I mean, have you seen the Chiefs though? Have you seen the Chiefs?
No, it doesn't Daniel matter Jones. To me. I think this is a
Daniel Jones,
especially because I think the Packers are going to keep it on the ground mostly. I mean,
I'm confident in this Chiefs team winning it. So
I don't know. We got to see, but I'm excited to see Jordan Love this weekend. But not having Rodgers obviously is just a major issue, because honestly, I think the Packers and Rodgers are a perfect fit. If Rodgers were to leave to or not leave, but if he were traded to Denver or something like that, I don't think he'd have as good of a shot at winning a title as he would in Green Bay. Only other place I could see him having as good of a chance is maybe Pittsburgh, because obviously New Orleans, maybe.
Well, I mean, of course, in New Orleans, there's no chance that happened.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen.
I think I want to give some respect to LaFleur, to go in there and also just coach that game. The game plan was absolutely perfect, minus Devontae Adams, and the defense minus their defensive coordinator. To go in, and they kept the ball on the ground. They threw it when they needed to. I really liked
7 career losses in 2.5 years. That is crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And of course, he will be defined by that decision last year in the playoffs. But you take away that, and what do you regard him as? A top 5, top 3 coach in the NFL?
Top 5.
Maybe not that maybe not all the way to top 3, but they might have won the Super Bowl. Like I think I might have confidently said they could have beaten the Chiefs as well. So I don't know. Like, give some respect to LaFleur, and I think Sugar, you argued the other day that Russell Wilson is maybe the most valuable player to his team. I think I would
a while ago I did, yes.
With Rodgers. I think I'd fire back by saying
this was way before. I argued that like before 2020, I think.
Really? I thought I heard you say that a couple weeks ago.
I'm putting A-Rod at 1. I think I said so, Wilson. That was me. I said Wilson was.
Oh, you said Wilson?
Yeah.
It was you, huh? I think I'd say Rodgers, and I think that this week we're going to see a lot of.
That's why, 3. I think Wilson, Rodgers, and Brady would be the 3 in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and we're going to see this week. We'll get into it in picks later, but to move on, we're going to do this fantasy start sit segment again. You guys liked it last week. I think we did a pretty good job. We gave you 3 starts, 3 sits, and statistically, we went 5 of 6. Like the people we said to start, all 3 of them, I believe, went above their projected points total in PPR and half PPR leagues, and the sits. Only one messed up, and that's a late garbage time touchdown for Brandon Cooks, which Anish said to sit. But 5 of 6, we're gonna hope to keep that going this week. We're gonna you guys are seeing this as the full episode or a clip on YouTube. Please leave down in the comment section any other start sit questions you have, because again, we're gonna talk about only 6 players in this, but we'd like to respond in comments with more. My start this week
on our Instagram, we will have a poll up there as well.
On Instagram, yeah, we'll do it as well. My start this week is Taysom Hill, and we talked about him earlier. If he starts for the Saints this week, if he comes back from his concussion, I think you have to really think about starting him in 12-team, 10-team leagues. And in Superflex, there is absolutely no excuse for not playing him in that Superflex spot. He started 4 games last year. He was a QB1, which means a top 12 quarterback fantasy-wise in every single one. He finished 3rd, 12th, 6th, and 11th in his 4 starts as fantasy quarterbacks. And he's playing the Falcons this week. I've already told this to Streetcar, but Anish, I want you to guess. He scored 22 touchdowns in his career. How many against the Falcons?
I'm going to say like 15 out of them.
No, so 11 of his 22. So half of his career touchdowns have come against the Falcons. So if he starts this week, I think you really have to think about starting him. I don't know like the little cutoff, like where I would rank him. But you look at quarterbacks that have tough matchups this week. Ryan Tannehill, I think you have to start Taysom Hill over Ryan Tannehill, who's going up against the Rams, who now has to play without Derrick Henry. I don't know exactly where I draw the line, but Taysom Hill, you really got to think about starting him just because of his recent success as a quarterback 1 in fantasy football.
I'd agree with that. My start of the week, Deontay Johnson against the Bears. I watched the Niners and Bears game this past Sunday. Debo feasted. He absolutely feasted.
Yes, he did.
And it's got me, it kind of got me thinking, as I looked at the potential matchups for this week when it comes to receivers, I'm trying to think of what Steeler wide receiver will not replicate that Debo performance, but at least, be the most productive out of the bunch. And I really think it's going to be Deontay Johnson. Chase Claypool, also, you could put a word in for him, but I think Deontay Johnson is the wide receiver 1 in the Steelers offense.
It's just because of how he matches with Ben. I just don't think Ben can hit Claypool.
I think people need to look at his stats. No,
he's really good.
Really good this year.
It's a lot of targets. I think he's at 63 targets over 6 games.
So he's been really good.
And I think he's going to rack up even more targets here. And I think it's going to be, a productive game for Deontay Johnson in this game.
Agreed. Again, very high on Deontay this year. My start of the week is Myles Gaskin, running back out of Miami. And look, he's had a disappointing season. I know people drafted him really high. He's had like 1 week where he's, just gone off, and I believe it was against Tampa, and most of it was through the receiving game. But think about their matchup this week. They're at home. They're against Houston, right? And I think it's a very winnable game. And I think it's a game that, they'll need to get the running game going. And I think Gaskin is just very efficient. Look, I think the other guy's Ahmed. I don't know his first name, but
Salvon. I think he went to Washington.
Salvon Ahmed, I believe. But, he is definitely also their kind of power back. But I think Gaskin out the backfield, it's just going to be so easy for him to get these checkdowns. And I think in PPR formats, you got to start a guy like that, especially with all this running back, uncertainty with maybe you need to replace Derrick Henry or something, because I certainly have to. So I think Myles Gaskin would be an interesting start, and especially against a team that it's just a winnable game. And I think you'd always got to start a running back against the team that you think Miami would be up against.
Yeah, it's funny because Shrikar said to sit Myles Gaskin last week, and the way the Gaskin season has gone so far, it's a bad game and then a good game and then a bad game and then a good game. So if things proceed that way, this would be a good week to start Myles Gaskin.
Knocking on wood, because I'm starting him this week.
I think Jalen Waddle could do good this week too.
Which is funny because you said to sit him last week too.
Yep.
But I'm going to say this week, you got to sit Khalil Herbert, who's going up against those Steelers who held Nick Chubb last week under 8 fantasy points. They're on an absolute tear right now. I think I'd still argue they are the best defense in football, and they certainly make the most impact out of any defense. They're really good at just smothering teams' weapons. And right now, with this Bears offense, I know that Justin Fields had a good game last week without Matt Nagy and against the 49ers, but I don't think that we can bank on that as a week-to-week thing. Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney just haven't gotten to going completely. So I think this Steelers defense is going to sell out to stop the run, sell out to stop Khalil Herbert. And while he's been really good this year and a little inspired by what he could be going forward for the Bears, maybe as a backup to David Montgomery, or if they look to trade Montgomery, I just think you sit Khalil Herbert this week if you can afford to. Of course, maybe you had Derrick Henry, maybe you got like Antonio Gibson, players like that are just dealing with injuries, or you got guys on bye. But if you can afford to, sit Khalil Herbert. I think at best you maybe throw him in your flex spot, but I think you kind of want to keep him on your bench this week.
Yep. My sit of the week, or sits of the week, Kenneth Gainwell. But honestly, can you really trust any Eagles back at this point? Because even if we say Boston Scott is the starter, is he really the starter?
Jordan
I don't
Howard
know.
is
I don't know what the Eagles. I don't know what the Eagles are trying to do right now. So I wouldn't really put faith in any Eagles back to start. So I'm assuming that most teams would have a guy better than Kenneth Gainwell or a Boston Scott. So make sure you start them. Keep those guys on your bench until we get some sort of clarity as to what the running back situation is in Philly.
Agreed. Yep. I think, again, no, surefire thing without Miles Sanders there. He's on IR. My sit of the week is going to be Kyler Murray, and that is surprising considering he was a top fantasy quarterback, I believe the first 5 weeks of the season. But again, injured, right? I believe it's the leg, I think, or the ankle, one of the, I believe
it's a ankle sprain.
Yeah, ankle sprain. So, I don't even know his status, but if he does play, again, he didn't do well against San Francisco the first time around, and now this one is at SF. Again, I think it's not that he's been figured out. I just think, he hasn't had those same crazy electric plays. I would sit him. I'd be a little bit cautious. Like you said, maybe a Taysom Hill over a Kyler Murray. I know it's a bold pick, but maybe I think Taysom Hill might outshine him. And, just another consideration, Jermaine McNichols, I believe that's
Jeremy McNichols.
Yeah. So also, again, Titans, I don't know what they're going to do. Who's their power back? They've got 3 running backs, Deontay Foreman, McNichols, and Adrian Peterson. Again, are they going to do committee? It's just too much uncertainty right now to really trust a guy like McNichols, who everyone thinks is going to be the main guy. But again, he's just always been a receiving third down back. So can he really handle the workload like that? No one can replace Henry. So those would be my 2 sits. Kind of.
Once Henry went out last week, or even with Henry injured, they gave McNichols 1 carry. So I'm honestly more in on Adrian Peterson as a fantasy football player than I am Jeremy McNichols. He does this every year. He gets randomly signed in the middle of the year, comes in, gets 15 carries his first week, and scores 1 or 2 touchdowns. So I might even think about starting Adrian Peterson, and I think I've got him starting in a flex spot right now, assuming Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't play.
I don't think he will.
I don't think he will either. But yeah, I think you say no to McNichols, maybe think about starting Adrian Peterson instead. But yeah, that's all we got for you guys for fantasy start sit. Again, leave us a comment down below if you're on YouTube, or go to our Instagram to give us some of your specific questions, because we'd love to help you guys out. And hopefully this is a successful week like last week. Speaking of successful weeks, it was kind of the opposite, Anish, of your picks week last week. I know we like to kind of get on each other about picks, and we laugh. We have a competitive, fun time. I don't think there will ever, and I'm confident in this, ever be a week as bad as the week Anish had in picks last week. And this is just for fun. Of course, it can happen to any one of us. I'm surprised that it happened more often.
It's crazy because I dog on you guys for picks all the time. And you know what? I totally deserve this. You guys can go, look. You guys can have all the fun with this, because for the last 2 years, I have been clowning you guys for dumb picks. I totally deserve it. I went 3-12. I will say it. I was awful. Okay. 8 picks in the span of 5 minutes. I was right on. And I remember Jack was like, I'll give you credit for the Colts pick. And he jinxed it.
Okay. That was in the first quarter.
They were up 14-0. And you know what? I will take the L on it. I don't even know if I'll be able to come back with the rest of the season. Let's see.
Anything's
But,
possible.
man, it was a terrible week. I mean, I think Streetcar went under 500 a couple weeks, but this is just by far the worst anyone has ever gone. I think anyone ever will.
I mean, when
go.
I went under 500, it was like 1 or 2.
Yeah, it was like 1 or
7 and
2.
9.
This was just awful.
I want to say the worst week I've had was like 6 and 10. But like, I mean,
yeah, I'm taking full responsibility for it. I'm letting my guys down. Everyone was rooting for me. I know you guys all were. You guys can still root for me. We'll come back. Let's move on.
I think my favorite part about it too was it was every single game that
every game we differed on.
And the 3 wins you got, I would argue, were the most obvious picks of the week. Like he got the
save for Kansas City.
That's true. And we all got that one. But I mean, it was the Rams over Houston and it was the Bills over Miami. And it, like, up to that point until Monday Night Football, it was like you got everyone wrong. And
everyone that could have gone either way. Every single one.
That's
it was pretty funny.
Let's move on.
I had a good time with that. But coming into this week, I'm in first place, 78 and 44. Our fans, you guys actually in second place. Like, you go vote on our Instagram down in the description. Do it every week. 77 and 45. Streetcar 76 and 46. And he's 71 and 51. You got a lot of ground to make up now. But hey, it can happen any week. So let's go over. We've got 5 games to pick this week. The rest of them will be on our Instagram. Browns versus Bengals is the first one. Anish, you say the Browns need to win.
I'm going last.
No. You're going first.
Yeah.
No. Let's Streetcar. No. Streetcar said it. He's going first.
Streetcar,
okay.
go first.
I'm cool with going first because I have my pick in mind. Look, we talked about it already. The Browns look to be falling apart. Meanwhile, the Bengals have to be not only embarrassed but angry coming into this game. You lose to the Jets. I mean, they're going to be irate. I'm going to take the Bengals. They're just going to be I think they're going to be the more motivated squad with less drama on their side right now. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns won, but I'm going to stick with the Bengals.
Again, I've picked the Browns basically every week this year, just saying this is the week they could break through. This is the week they're going to make me look good. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. I think I'm going with the Bengals in this one. I legitimately think the Browns could win, and I want to pick the Browns because I still think they're a Super Bowl contending team. I still think they're one of the best teams in the AFC. I think they're better than the Bengals. But at this point, with all the turmoil going on, all the stuff going on in that locker room, not having Odell, which I still like, I wonder how the Browns will be able to stretch the field without him. It might take away one of their weapons. I know they've got Anthony Schwartz, who's really fast. But he's just not he's not the same threat as Odell Beckham Jr. is. And while Odell was not making the catches, he's still something that teams have to game plan against. And teams, they've sold out a lot to take away Odell. But I think the Bengals come through and they win this one. Can you afford to do it?
Yes, I can. And here's what I'm going to do. Look, if anything, if I was an objective guy, okay. I think you guys are saying the Browns could legitimately. I disagree. I think Cincinnati should be heavily favored in this game. They're coming off a loss. They should be really angry, and they're gonna take it out on us. They've got 3 receivers that I don't know the Browns can stop, and they've got a running game that has been looking really good with Joe Mixon, right? And even Samaje Perine has had his moments. And again, their defense has been top 10 up until that point, up until the Jets game. They had been looking really good. So if anything, the Cincinnati Bengals should be heavily favored by everyone. That being said, this is going to be the last time I'm going to, if they lose, I'm done. I told you, I said this is the game. I'm done. So I'm picking the Browns. This is going to be the last time I feel like I'm going to do that if they lose. This could be a game I could get back on y'all. And again, the last time I was the only one picking the Browns and you guys didn't, I was right. It was the Browns Vikings. So I'm trying to manifest some luck here, but I'm going with Cleveland.
Our next game is Chargers versus Eagles. The Chargers on a little bit of a slide, but I think that they get an Eagles team that while they looked good against Detroit, we got to remember that they were playing the Lions, who, Anish picked last week, and they lose 44-0, 44-6.
Come on, man! We're at home.
No, and I wanted to pick the Lions too. I'm glad I didn't. I'm going with the Chargers in this one. The Chargers, they can't stop the run right now, and their offense just hasn't been the same the last couple of weeks. But Mike Williams has been dealing with kind of a nagging injury, and I feel like he's getting closer to 100%. Keenan Allen is finding himself again. They still have Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert, and I think Staley stops this slide a little bit, and it's a good team to do it against because I just don't think the Eagles are that good.
The Chargers should win this game, but as we said before, their run defense terrible. And guess what Philly loves to do? It's run the football. And the Eagles have two very good corners as well. So an injured Mike Williams and Keenan, maybe they can mitigate that a little bit. It's a tough matchup for the Bolts. And honestly, my gut is telling me to pick Philly, but the last time I picked a Philly upset, it didn't go well. So I'm going to go with the Chargers here. Hopefully they can get right in this game and stop this slide.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chargers too. Again, 2-game skid. I think, again, good teams find a way to kind of make it right. So, tough skid for these last 2 weeks, but I think they get a Philly team again who's riding a little bit high. And I think the Chargers are, a little bit angry after that loss to New England. And I think Justin Herbert is angry, and this is going to be a team to feast. But you're right, Shrikar, in terms of matchups, just not good for the Bolts. So Philly's got a real shot, but Chargers.
I think it's really funny how the Eagles scored 44 points last week, and Jalen Hurts completed 9 passes on the day.
114 yards.
So see, this is my
no
point.
touchdown
Sirianni
passes.
is not that bad of a coach. I'm just saying.
It was Detroit.
But
What do you mean he's not that bad? I don't know. It's the Lions, dude. Come on now.
I like him. I like him a little bit.
The next game, Packers Chiefs. We've talked about it a little bit. I'm going to say the same thing I've said recently with the Seahawks and Geno Smith, who did recently prove me wrong, and Geno Smith finally won a game, but you can't pick Jordan Love here. I know I've said all these things about the Packers, but that was with Aaron Rodgers. We've said all the things about the Chiefs, and all of these things still stand, but you can't come out and pick Jordan Love when we haven't seen him in an NFL game. Of course, next week might have a different opinion, but I can't bank on it. I'm going with the Chiefs.
Yep. No Aaron Rodgers. And it's crazy because the line for this was Chiefs -3 when Vegas opened. So did they predict this would happen? I don't know. But I mean, look, the Chiefs have proven that no game is completely safe with them this year. So I wouldn't totally count Jordan Love out. But with that being said, I'm going to take the Chiefs here. As Jack said, you can't really pick Jordan Love in this game, especially with it being the first game he's starting this year. So I don't know. I'm going to go with the Chiefs here, but who knows? If the Chiefs lose this, I mean, they're out. They're out in the AFC conversation for me.
Yeah, I'm going with the Chiefs. Again, like I said, they got a break and they're going to take advantage of it. I trust them a lot more. I guess I'm still a lot higher on them than you two are, I guess. I've still
high, just waiting for
it
to materialize.
They got a huge break. Remember I said this. They have to go 3-1 in these next 4 games. They already won 1.
Given their pedigree, I would never count out the Chiefs, but that doesn't mean I can't be lower on them right now.
I'm still high on them. This is a huge break. Lucky, but yeah, they're gonna win.
Final game of the week, biggest game of the week, Titans, Rams. It would be so much bigger if we had Derrick Henry playing. I might be leaning towards the Titans, but just with that blow, it makes it so much harder to pick the Titans. The Rams are on a roll. Cooper Kupp is killing it. Darrell Henderson it's been great. The defense just added Von Miller, and he's not one of those players like a quarterback where he's got to learn the scheme first. They're going to tell him, you just got to go down, take down Ryan Tannehill once or twice in this game. He's going to go out there and do his best. I think the Rams get it done, and they're at home, which is an advantage.
Yeah, without Derrick Henry, as I said, the passing game and the running game both take hits with his injury. The offensive line, it's not that good. Teams aren't going to respect the rushing attack as much, even if AP is going to play. I think it's going to be a big day for this D line. I don't think Von Miller is going to suit up for this game, but I think LA is going to win this game at home in primetime. I'm going to take Stafford.
Titans have looked good. They're 6-2, and Titans fans have tried to prove me wrong by saying Christian Fulton is that guy. Well, the Rams have that guy, Cooper Kupp.
Robert Woods?
He is going to torch
Robert Woods.
Oh, wait, no, let me not jinx that. Hold on. Knock on wood that Cooper Kupp is that dude. And look, I hate to say this. And look, I don't wish injury upon anybody, but I think that offensive player of the year take is looking pretty solid right now. So yeah, he's that dude. He's on pace to have the best wide receiver season ever. And yeah, Rams.
It's funny because he had a really good week last week, and it's one of his lower ranking weeks this year.
He is so good at football.
It's a tough matchup for the Titans too, because AJ Brown's been great recently, but he's going to get Jalen Ramsey. The offensive line, while Taylor Lewan has definitely gotten better, the rest of it not as great pass protecting. And Ryan Tannehill is going to have to do everything on his own. It's not a good team to go up against.
Roger Saffold on Aaron Donald. Have fun, dude.
Yeah,
have fun.
The Rams are all in though, and this is going to be a big test, and we'll learn a lot about both of these teams and their outlook for the rest of the season going forward. But anyways, that's all we got for you guys in this one. We hope you enjoyed this really long episode. We know we talked about a lot of stuff because that last week was just absolutely crazy with all the little football news that we've gotten. But we hope you guys enjoyed the episode. As we say every episode, if you're on YouTube, please consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button. leaving a comment for us, and we'll make sure to respond to everyone down there. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please consider following the show, downloading the episode, marking it as played, and leaving a 5-star review if you really appreciated it. Instagram, as always, go vote on the rest of the games, and our Twitter is down there too. Live tweets for almost every game throughout the weekend. Anyways, that's all we got for you guys. We've been the Cold Hard Truth Podcast. We will see you next time.